All right, welcome to the SnydeReport. I am your host, Gary Snyder. My guest today is the Governor of Kentucky, Andy Beshear. Governor, welcome.
Yeah, thanks for having me on.
It's my pleasure, and sorry, I just got a haircut, so the light is I'm at that point in my life where the light gleams off my head, so sorry if I'm blinding you there.
No, I'm all good, ready to go.
Well, let's start here because you guys down in Kentucky have faced several weather-related disasters this year, from flooding to tornadoes. I just want to check in and check on the recovery efforts and see what lessons have emerged from those challenges.
We have been hit in Kentucky harder than just about anywhere in the country, maybe anywhere in the world. Over the last 5 to 6 months, we have had 4 major natural disasters. We've had 14 of them over the last 5.5 years. We've gone through the worst tornado disaster in our history, which killed 81 people. We went through the worst flooding disaster in our history, which killed 45 people. In May, we had a tornado tear through 2 neighborhoods, taking 19 lives, and that followed 2 massive flooding events and a major ice event. Sadly, we've gotten pretty good at responding to these. Our current response to the May tornadoes is probably the fastest response we've ever had. We have people in intermediate housing. That's a travel trailer program that gets people out of a shelter, out of a hotel, into a place where they're not worried about the next month, but maybe can even look at the next year of the rebuilding effort. We got that done in less than a week. The first time we did that in 2021, it took us 2 months. The last time we did it, it took us about 3 weeks. We did this one in about 5 days. We're getting better at the emergency responses as well, especially these flooding events when the National Weather Service gives us a heads up. We pre-position assets all across the Commonwealth. So we have the boats ready to go, the helicopters ready to go. In the February flooding event, we had 1,000 rescues in less than 24 hours. That's 1,000 Kentuckians that are alive because we have gotten better and better and better at this. I think the lessons are really twofold. Number one, you've got to be prepared, and you've got to get better every single time. Your emergency operations group is one of the most important as a governor. You've got to have decisive people. You've got to have people that work around the clock, work really hard. And the second thing is you've got to throw resources when one of these hits immediately. You've got to start moving the water. You've got to start moving the generators. You've got to respond in real time and make sure you're pushing every resource to the people that have been impacted as fast as possible. Thankfully, we've got really great people in Kentucky, from the first responders that on their own come from all different areas to help in those first hours and days, to wonderful people who come and help people dig out at that toughest moment in their life. I've now more than 100 times stood next to someone looking at what used to be their house, and they always ask the same question: where do I start? And it never fails. 10 or 12 people show up and say, why don't you start with us, and help that person to start picking through the rubble that's there. So we're digging out of this most recent one. The debris removal's going faster than we've ever seen, but it's hard, especially when you've gotten hit by so many.
Well, as a former resident of Kentucky, Florence, y'all, our thoughts and prayers are definitely with you and your leadership team and the people of Kentucky with those disasters.
Well, thank you. I think there's a phrase that says God sends his toughest challenges to his strongest soldiers. And so maybe we're just tough enough in Kentucky to take a lot of this.
You know, I have a lot to get to, but I want to first start and just get your thoughts. When we take a look at what's happening in California, while it doesn't directly impact Kentucky, the actions of the president going beyond the governor and activating National Guard troops from California. As a governor, how does that concern you, that National Guard troops, which could be your troops, does that concern you at all that this is being done?
It does concern me. Listen, we need law and order, but that falls to both the local authorities and to a governor. I know I had to call in our National Guard during a period of unrest during my governorship. Tim Walz had to do the same. But for a president to activate a state's guard without ever talking to their governor is not going to be effective. You're not going to have the communication that you need with local and state law enforcement, and it sets a really dangerous precedent. So I think that this is one where the president absolutely should have gone through the governor. He probably could have gotten better information on what's going on the ground. My hope is that all of these protests remain peaceful, but certainly a president going around a governor and activating their own National Guard when the governor is the commander-in-chief for operations within that state is very concerning. I think there's going to be a legal challenge on it, and it's something that we all ought to be able to work together better than this being the current result.
Do you think it's made matters worse or better?
Well, not being out there, it's hard to know and to see. Certainly the descriptions of the protests as they are right now vary significantly from what you hear from some news outlets and then what the president is talking about. But given what these protests are about, there is a concern that it could escalate. Now, my hope is that the Guard is used solely in ways that protect government buildings and government property and is not used to intimidate groups of people that already feel very intimidated.
Okay, thanks for that. I just want to move on now. You have won 3 major election victories in a deeply red state. What's your secret to bridging the political divides, and what advice would you offer leaders, say up here in Indiana, that are striving for bipartisan success like you've had in Kentucky?
Well, we look forward to seeing some of that success in Indiana. I thought your gubernatorial candidate this last time around was a great candidate. I hated to see that come up short, but I know a bright future for her and for a lot of the other folks running on that ticket. You know, it starts with getting good candidates, but I really think that there are 3 things that I do and that Democrats, if we do, can win all over the country. Number 1 is to focus. Now, there are a lot of issues that are out there today, and a lot of the American public feels that Democrats are distracted. We've got to focus on those core concerns of people when they wake up in the morning and go to bed at night, and none of them are partisan. They start with the person's job and whether they make enough to support their family. The next is their doctor's appointments for themselves, their parents, or their kids. Then it's the roads and bridges they drive on each day, the public school they drop their kids off at, and whether they feel safe in their community. I think it explains a lot about this last presidential election. When you look at folks that may strongly support reproductive rights, but ended up voting for Donald Trump. It's because if you're worried about paying for the cost of your next prescription, it's hard to get to anything else. If you're worried about putting food on the table, if you can't afford that first home as a young couple, if the costs of everything for your new baby are skyrocketing, you know, it's hard to reach those other things. And if we focus on this lane, it is wide open for us. Because while Donald Trump promised to bring down prices and to focus on those core concerns, he's doing anything but it. He's making life tougher for people by a disastrous on-again, off-again, across-the-board, reciprocal, industry-specific, company-specific tariff policy that is making everything cost more, and everybody knows it goes directly back to him. So we can be the party of making your life better, whether you're a Democrat, Republican, or independent, not moving right, not moving left, but moving forward. So that's number 1. We got to focus. Number 2 is we got to talk like real human beings again. I think that we let advocacy speak, which had the right meanings behind it, but led us to sound like college professors. When in Kentucky we have friends going through addiction, we don't call it substance use disorder, we call it addiction because it's mean and it's tough and it's killed far too many people. When somebody's going hungry, they're going hungry. They're not food insecure. And if we respond to these potential massive cuts in SNAP and say, well, more people will be food insecure, that doesn't have the meaning of that child or that family or that senior not having enough to eat. Now, there's so many others, unhoused, justice-involved populations, which are our inmates. We've just got to talk like normal human beings with emotion behind our words. And the final thing is we've got to share our why. We're really good at Democrats on the what, on putting out these big policy papers that have all this nuance, but we rarely talk about our why. For me, that's my faith. That's my belief in the golden rule that we love our neighbor as ourselves, and the parable of the Good Samaritan that says everyone is our neighbor. So many of the decisions I make is based on that. Are we lifting somebody up like that Samaritan, or are we kicking them while they're down? And I've had moments where I've made decisions that could be viewed as politically fraught, that explaining the why has changed all of it. When I vetoed the nastiest anti-LGBTQ plus legislation that had ever passed in Kentucky during my election year, I explained it in that my faith teaches me that all children are children of God, and I don't think it's right to be picking on a group of kids. And if the legislature was going to show them hate, I was going to show them love. If the legislature was going to show them judgment, I was going to show them acceptance. But simply by explaining the why, even though it might have polled this way or that way in Kentucky, it was the right thing to do, and people saw that I was trying to do the right thing, even if they might not have agreed with me. The other side ran $10 million of anti-trans ads. We didn't lose 1 point. We won re-election by the largest margin I've ever won.
Governor, can you hold through a quick break?
Absolutely.
You're listening to the SnydeReport with Gary Snyder. All right, this is the part of the SnydeReport where we thank our sponsors, and we have a growing list. So let's start with Robin Winston. Robin has been there when we first sent out our first email, 147 subscribers. We're now over 108,000. So thank you, Robin Winston, and helping us get the podcast going in the right direction. Next up is our good friend, former Congresswoman Jill Long Thompson. Her book, Across the Aisle, Why Bipartisanship Works for America. Get that anywhere you buy your books. Also, former two-term governor, two-term U.S. Senator Evan Bayh. Evan has been a sponsor of the newsletter, now jumps on board with the podcast. Congressman Andre Carson. Congressman Carson has been there from the start. We're glad to have him over here on the newsletter now. He needs your help to win re-election next year, so make sure you support Congressman Carson. Next up, State Representative Cherish Pryor. Cherish has been there from the start on the newsletter, joining us on the podcast now. So is State Senator Greg Taylor. I want to thank Senator Taylor for all of his support through the years. Next, we have a couple of new sponsors. First up is Indiana Citizen. You want to check out their new project, One Heartbeat Away. Do Christian nationalists have an agenda for Indiana? All you have to do is look at the lieutenant governorship and you can see right away that they do. So thank you, Indiana Citizen. Next up is Jump Laundry. You can visit them at jumplaundry.com. They have home pickup. They do your dry cleaning, wash and fold with, I might add, no judgments, and next day service. So if you're in a crunch for time, you don't want to do your own laundry, get a hold of Jump Laundry at jumplaundry.com or at 317-740-5011, and they will take care of all of your laundry needs. All right, welcome back to the SnydeReport. I am your host, Gary Snyder. Today we are speaking with Kentucky Governor Andy Beshear. Just before the break, Governor, you gave 3 examples of why you have won in Kentucky. We do our podcast with my kitchen table in the background.
Amen.
Is that the key to Democrat success? I know you gave 3 reasons, but 2 of those seem to go back to the kitchen table.
I think they all can. It's what's that worry of the person at the kitchen table? What are those things that if you don't feel comfortable in your life, you can't get to anything else, and you would vote for somebody that can make it just a little bit easier? Right now, things cost way too much. I was really excited to announce a decrease in the gas tax in Kentucky. That's after I've cut the income tax twice and the property tax rate 4 times. And that's important right now, because a little more money in somebody's pocket makes their life just a bit easier. And I think as people, we want to care about a whole lot, but providing for our kids, providing for our families always comes first. We can be that party We can be the party that says the first thing that we're going to do as Democrats is to make sure that you can afford that next meal, that you can pay your bills, that you've got a good enough job where you can take your family on vacation. Those are the things that when people have that opportunity and can breathe a little bit more, yes, they reach other issues, but they're willing to cross the aisle and vote for somebody because it means a better life for their kids.
Your state's senior senators, Rand Paul and Mitch McConnell, hold significant influence in national politics, with Rand Paul being an outspoken critic of the big, bad, ugly bill that's now headed towards the Senate. Your thoughts on those two and their opposition, or at least Rand's opposition to the big, bad, ugly bill, and does his opposition hold?
I will admit that there aren't many times that Rand Paul, Mitch McConnell, and I agree on something. But I tell you what, we're all speaking out against tariffs. And they should get credit for that. And I just say to your listeners, when Democratic governor and the 2 Republican senators of the Commonwealth of Kentucky agree that tariffs are a bad idea, it's because tariffs are a bad idea. That's a fact, and not enough. You also see Rand Paul speaking out against this big, ugly bill. I'm glad he's voicing opposition, but I think it's for some of the wrong reasons. You know, this bill fails in every way. It fails fiscally because it adds trillions of dollars to the national debt while busting every state's budget. See, states have to have balanced budgets, and we've gone ahead and passed those, but just the cuts to SNAP, which are wrong in and of themselves, that's food assistance for people who are going hungry, will add about $300+ million in costs to Kentucky's budget after we've already balanced it. So fiscally, it's anything but conservative. The math doesn't work. But then the other side is it's just cruel. And that's what I'd really like to see more Republicans speaking out against. 16 million Americans could lose their health care coverage. That's 3.5 times the population of Kentucky. Those are human beings that deserve to see a doctor. You know, Jesus said a doctor is for the sick. I think that means we've got to make sure that a doctor is there for the sick. And then if you remove the health care coverage and thus the dollars that support the health care coverage of 16 million Americans, rural hospitals are going to close. And then whether you've got private insurance or Medicaid, you're going to drive several hours to see the same doctor you used to be able to see in your community because that job is gone, the revenue is gone, the second largest employer in your county behind the public schools are gone. It will be disastrous.
One last question for you, because I know you have better things to do when governing a state than talking with me, but your name has surfaced in discussions. You've even brought it up yourself about the 2028 presidential race. I know a lot of people here in Indiana are excited about that potential. How do you view those conversations?
Well, first, it's flattering. My job right now is to be the best governor of Kentucky I can be and to speak up and to speak out against policies from this administration that are harming this country. I love the United States of America, and I do not want to see policies out there that make it harder on working families, harder to have that next doctor's appointment, and ultimately the meanness and the cruelty that are behind the way that some of these policies from the Trump administration are carried out, like firing all these federal employees and lying that it's their fault, that they were somehow bad employees. My job next year is the head of the Democratic Governors Association. We're going to win a lot of races. There are 36 next year, so no pressure. But we've got a lot of incumbents. We've got a lot of term-limited governors whose legacies we've got to protect, and then we're going to flip some seats that are out there. And then we'll sit down and look at the future after that. I've said before that if you'd asked me 2 years ago, it's something I would have never considered, but I'm concerned where this country is, and I'm committed to not leaving a broken country to my kids or to anyone else's. So when I sit down and we take a look at the future, it'll be whether I'm a person in a position to heal this country. We can't have the us and the them any longer. I mean, we're way too divided, and I want my kids to be able to grow up with the stability that we had with this country, to where we could go on that vacation. We could get away with our family and not have to turn on the news every morning and say, what the heck happened last night? So I'm love this current job. Being governor is more than enough for me, but we'll win a lot of races next year, and then we'll see after that.
You know, I wasn't completely truthful here. I did have one more quick question.
Sure.
This comes from our good friend Robin Winston.
Yes.
Kentucky basketball or Louisville basketball?
So when you're the governor of Kentucky, you have two jobs when it comes to basketball. Number one, to root for your in-state schools, and number two, to root against Duke.
Thank you, Governor.
Thank you.
I'm Gary Snyder. This is a Snide Report, and we are out.